Good evening, everyone. This is Lottie. I'm doing my live as I normally do on the last Tuesday of every month. It's great to have you here. And thank you so much for everybody that signs up to the Facebook page. And this is being recorded. So always be mindful about what you're asking questions about. It will be put on live on the Facebook page within a few days. If there are any questions that you want to ask me, please, by all means, get in touch with me separately. And then I can answer your questions or give you information about appointments or tell you of the upcoming things that are happening that you can be a part of. So welcome. It's good to see people here, and let's get on with the work if that's okay with everybody. I'm just going to do a little tiny sort of housekeeping. Usually Fee's here. She's not able to be here with me tonight. So again, welcome to everybody that listens to the live, and for the people that are going to be on here, already on here. So housekeeping wise, I want to talk to you very briefly about keeping yourself safe. So things that you say on here, that you choose to say on here, will be heard by other people. Some of the questions are the places where there's such richness that we can get more out of. So I'm always up for questions. So if you want to put any in the chat, that's absolutely fine. And yeah, sharing information is really important to me. Being able to give people some information about relationships or talking to therapists is really important to me as well. So just going to let somebody else in. And so yeah, just sort of mindfully looking at the housekeeping where we are. Obviously, if the internet goes down, then we will try and up again. If we can't do that, then we will abandon this live. These lives are free. It's just information giving, sharing resources, and giving couples and therapists some information. So by all means, if you're a couple that you need help, or you're a therapist who wants to know more about
3 or a dozen or 100, a couple is 2.
Okay, bear with me a minute. Okay. So welcome. Welcome to everybody. I'm not going to answer any questions at the moment. We're going to go deep dive into what we're talking about tonight, which is intimacy and sex on different levels. So I've got sort of 4 quadrants that I want us to think about tonight. And just to let people that have just come in, we've just done a little tiny bit of housekeeping. So keeping yourself safe, asking questions, making sure you're muted. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to. That's entirely up to you. But if you choose to, that's fine. And this will be put out on the live Facebook page at some point. So let's start off with what does sex mean to you? So when I did my training all those years ago, one of the poignant parts for me on that training was the first year was all about ourselves and how we thought about sex, how we thought about it as an individual and in a couple relationship, and our bias, our way of thinking about it, our family of origin. So what I want you to think about is, what does sex mean to you? And I'm going to give you a few questions to follow that up. So thinking about what actually does sex mean to you. So does it mean something that feels connective? Does it feel like it's a part of a relationship that's needed? Is it something that you actually find quite fearful, or you find it really difficult to talk about sex? How do you think about intimacy? Do you see that different from sex, or does it feel like it's the same thing? How do you feel about talking about sex? In a group, about your own sexual life, or do you, in a partnership, do you find bringing that up would be quite difficult? So I'm going to briefly say that again, because I can see people getting their pens ready. So I'm going to say that again. So the training that I had was all about us, first of all, which I thought was amazing. Unfortunately, that course is no longer in existence. But what does sex mean to you? So what does it actually mean to you from lots of different avenues, whether that's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? How do you feel about intimacy? And do you feel like that's the same thing? You know, when people talk about foreplay, people always talk about it's all sex, whatever names you put to it. But does intimacy seem different to sex? How did your family of origin talk about sex? Was it easily talked about? Did you find that it was uncomfortable? Were you able to actually speak to one parent about it and another one you really couldn't bring it up, or you're hoping they didn't find out? And how do you feel about talking about sex? So as your own sex life to friendships, or in a partnership, Or how do you feel now talking about sex as an adult? Does it come easy to you? Do you feel that actually there isn't that sort of tongue-tied part of us that goes, oh God, this feels really uncomfortable, taboo, or I feel like there'd be a bias against me if I say this is something that I like? So I just want you to think about that for a minute. We're not going to spend too long on this because I want us to think about how we can condense our own process to be able to talk much better with our partners, with ourselves, with our children even, but also thinking about if you're a therapist out there working with couples, a lot of the time therapists feel like if they're not psychosexual therapists, then they shouldn't be talking about sex, or they feel that they couldn't. And actually we're looking at couples and all of us as individuals holistically. So it includes some sexual process that goes on with a relationship. So I'm just going to leave you honestly for just a minute to just think about, just sit in that process, reflective practice, and go, what does it mean to me? When I actually ask myself that question, what does sex mean to me? What does intimacy mean to me? Was it difficult to talk about? Was it easy to talk about? Was it too over-sexualized to talk about? This is not something we're going to share, by the way, just in case anybody's thinking I'm going to ask you questions. Okay, so let us think about this on a broader scale. So when we talk about a relationship with ourselves or others, how are we speaking to ourselves about sex? How are we developing our repertoire, our language when we're talking about sex? And how do we do that? If you think about as an individual, as a single person, you'd be having that dialogue, maybe that rumination about your sexual life and how that's panned out. There was an article the other day saying about from a woman's point of view, have I slept with too many people? That wouldn't be probably not asked from a male perspective. So it's actually how society has put all these different traits on us, how our family of origin we've been brought up, and how we sit in that comfortable place about it, or whether we sit in an uncomfortable place about it. And that will give us an indication of how we would be able to talk to our partner or our clients going forward without all of this sort of like baggage that we carry as a societal functioning within a sexual world, and being able to embrace it in a way that gives us the opportunity to not be flawed by, will I rock the boat? Am I allowed to say that this isn't okay? Have I changed from age 20 to 40 and I don't want to do what I did before? So how would that come across to my partner, or in a couple relationship or a couple therapy? How would it be that I said to my partner, I don't want to do that anymore, or that doesn't fill the brief of me being able to be aroused when I'm with you? So sex needs to be talked in lots of different ways. So mentally and physically, definitely emotionally, spiritually. Where do you think the sort of process of you has got to? So just share with you that I'm now a tantra practitioner. So my thought process is about, where have I come from, family of origin? How do I feel about my sex life now? Where am I going with my sex life? And actually adding some tantra processes into it, which gives me that real enlightenment, bliss feeling without actually thinking about the sexual side of it. That's still there, but you're holding the energy of it. And I'm a non-touch practitioner, just point that out. And I work with couples with Tantra on a really sort of heart-to-heart sacred process. So we have a range of ways that we can think about sex. You know, from polyamory to open relationships to sacred relationships to single relationships, however we want to put that together for ourselves, our partners, or our couples in therapy. We need to be really open to the different ways that sex can enter into our lives and how it sits with us, because primarily our sexual being is the most potent energy that we have. And it's around us all the time. When we talk about erotic transference within the process of therapy, it's around us all the time. We don't do anything with it, but it is there. So the sort of top level of erotic transference, the conscious process here and the unconscious process that's down here, like the iceberg we see sometimes within therapy. So for me, a good sex life is about communication. So communication equals connection. So being able to develop your language around talking about sex. So having a normal, mediocre conversation about feelings. If your partner finds that really difficult, or you find it difficult of actually being able to talk about your feelings. So I separate feelings from emotions. This is my thing. It's not something I've read. I think feelings are intermittent and emotion has a story to it. So when we have a story to it, we hold on to it for much longer. If you think about a breakup, for instance, there would be an emotional attachment to this other person. There's a story, there's memories, and that's why it's very hard to get over breakups. Whereas with the feelings that we have for somebody, they're not intermittent, but we can have a feeling, you know, I feel glad the sun's out, I've just stubbed my toe, it really hurt, that car, you know, cut me up, I'm really, so feelings for me are sort of like something that there's loads. You know, if you actually counted up how many feelings you had through the day, you'd be quite surprised actually. But the emotion for me is sitting in that place of I've got a story attached to this. And that's why we hold on for things for much, much longer. And that's why I want us to really think about talking about sex from a feeling perspective, even though we have an emotional connection to somebody, because we want the other person to be able to go, I hear you. I'm not going to hold that and resent you for it. I'm going to hear you in that feeling process, so that you're able to look at it, dilute it, understand it, hear it, and then be able to do something about it. So when we talk about communication, we always talk about the imago dialogue, which I've mentioned before, but I will go through it very briefly here. The imago dialogue is an opportunity to slow everything down when you're talking to yourself. I agree with that. And to talking with partners or clients. So the imago dialogue is when you say something like, I get frustrated when you don't put the bins out on a Thursday. What I hear you say is, I get frustrated. There's the emotion that you don't put the bins out on a Thursday. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Is there anything else on this subject only? No, that's it. So what we're looking for from the other person, because the communication needs to be pure, is where's the empathy? Okay, we need to think about where's the empathy. So we've got a frustration, which is the emotion. We've got, I've heard what you've said because I've repeated it exactly back to you. And then we've got the empathic part of it. Now, I know I've mentioned the bins, which has got absolutely nothing to do with sex, if you think about it, but it does. Because when we talk about the whole process of being in a relationship, we're talking about the lead up to being able to be intimate, and then the lead up to being in a sexual relationship. And all this is part of it. Because when we say, can you put that spoon away? Can you put those bins out? Can you do this, do that? The chore process has a big part to play in how much do you respect me? How much do you think these things are important to me? And if they don't feel important to you, because actually you don't really care about the bins or the spoon or whatever it might be, what you're saying to the other person is, I don't actually hear you enough. So the imago dialogue is a really good place to start, when you can start thinking about, how can I hear you well? Now, obviously this needs practice, and you do it with really sort of like not hot topics. But also you've got to really think about allowing yourself to do this process. So the 3 things that I've mentioned is really important to come through that process. But if the bins aren't being negotiated properly, then we'd say, actually, I don't want to put the bins out. I want us to share the chore. So you're looking for things that you can work together on. If you separate the chore, I don't know whether anybody knows, but the chore list years ago used to be a massive disruption of relationships, and there was a reason for that. The chore list was about predominantly women saying, if you do all these jobs you can have a sexual favor, and they do all the jobs to their best ability, and then they wouldn't get anything. So men started rebelling and going, I'm actually not going to do anything, or any DIY or anything. So this chore list process come into play on the internet in a big way, because what we're trying to do now is get the chore list off the internet and stop the arguing about the chores. Because if we're arguing about you're not respecting me, we're then not going to have intimacy or sex. Hope that makes sense. So going on from communication, what I want you to remember is, if we very briefly looked at NLP, neuro linguistic programming, okay, and that was something that was a business tool years ago. It was when salesmen were taught how to read people and talk to people in a way, in a language that gave them the opportunity to see what sort of person they were, okay, so that they'd be able to sell this car. So when let's talk about relationships first of all, and I'll go back to the sales thing. When we're talking about relationships, or we're talking about how we speak to people, when we've got all this information coming towards us, and it might be just a conversation you're having with one person, but in your head, you've still got the stuff you looked on the internet and you had a conversation with somebody else. There are three elements to actually conversation, and one is generalization, the other one is deletion, and the other one is distortion. Okay, I'm not going to go into this because this is quite a deep process, but I use that process, being able to go, right, okay, with that information, what have you just done with it? Have you generalized it? Well, we always do that. That doesn't mean anything to me. We always do that. Have you actually heard what's come toward you that's important to the other person, that's getting them to speak to you and really understand it? But you've just generalized it. That's something you always do. Okay, then we get deletion. I'm deleting some of that conversation because it doesn't fit with who I think you think I am. So I'm not actually going to engage with that as much, I think. So we will hear the endings of something. We won't hear the whole dialogue, which is called pseudo listening. Pseudo listening is an opportunity for somebody to have the radio on, sorting out the kids, just getting in the car, and somebody's going talking to them in the background, and they're half listening to the other person. We do it a lot now. We've got phones. You'll see people on the phones and the other person talking, and they'll have to repeat themselves, or the person will answer in a way that actually doesn't even fit what they've just said, so they get angry and they know you haven't listened. Then the distorted part of our brain, you think of the five senses that we have that is actually working within seconds of how I process this stuff. We will then do a distortion. We would distort it in a way that actually doesn't fit, again, what's been said, or distort it because it doesn't fit where we are. So always think about those three elements of how we're receiving information, because our brain is full. Even though you might think you're on this program, this thing with me now live, there are other things going on for you in the background. Have you got to do something after this? How much can I engage with this? That's why I love setting intentions. Fee has taught me that. Setting an intention. How can I actually totally be here with you? And that's what we're trying to do in therapy with our individuals and how much of an intention can you give yourself within this process? So maybe I need to start doing intentions on these workshops. So I want you to really think about that. You know, the smell, the taste, the touch, the sounds, the sight, the smell. All these things are going on automatically for us. They're not something that just happens. They're automatically in our subconscious. Our subconscious is there to keep us safe. It's working day and night to keep us safe, and our conscious us is actually, you know, figuring out the world and taking risks and going forward. And what we've got to try and do in language is actually align the subconscious and the conscious so that it feels a little bit safer to do things, because your subconscious will always be trying to keep you safe. So when we talk about conversations about sex with our partners, or conversation with our friends, or going to a therapist and talking about sex in a therapy room, how do I keep myself as safe as possible? Because your subconscious is saying to you, should you be sharing that? Is that okay to share that? It does day and night look after you like a security guard, whereas the conscious us is very much sort of the here and now. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the stages of a conscious love relationship. Some of you might have seen this already. And it's really important when you're talking about the process. If you think about love languages or meta programs, there's always a process to everything. I'm just going to put that probably backwards, but I'm just going to do that. Okay, so this is where we look at Harville Hendricks' work, and he talks about the ideal, the ordeal, and the real deal. Okay, which sounds, it's very simplistic, but relationships can be quite complex, because when we think about how we're working from a place of origin, okay, we all have a template for love. Esther Perel says how we're loved as a child will determine how we love as an adult, and that couldn't be more true. So what we've come from and where we've navigated it in the middle, and then where we've got to, is absolutely the definition of what we've experienced. That's why I say to couples who are either going to have a baby or have children, please do a complete template for your children. So if you're going to argue, argue. If you're going to sulk, sulk, or stonewall, and then make up. They need to see the making up bit, because a lot of children in the way that we live, and for us ourselves out there, we didn't see the whole picture. We just saw the argument and the stonewall, and we didn't see the making up, that the okayness. It seemed to go on for a long time, that things didn't, they were ruptured, and we needed some repair there quicker than we had. So it's being able to process that as better, quicker, with relationships. I'm going to talk about rupture and repair in a minute, which is so vital for us, knowing there's a rupture and being able to come into our own and go, right, okay, how do I need to repair me with what's been said, and how I then need to go towards you. So let's have a look at this conscious love relationship. So when we talk about romantic love, we're talking about attraction, bonding, hope, and ecstasy. So in the other lives, I've talked about when you meet somebody, first of all, there's automatic limerence. Okay, obviously, if you're attracted to that person, there is. If you're not, there wouldn't be. But the limerence is the obsession and the possession that we have, which is quite normal. Okay, we go towards somebody and we are besotted with them. They are the best thing that's ever happened. They get me. And we want that so much that we want to sit with it for a long time. But we have to fade out of limerence, because if we don't, limerence will then become something that's actually really obsessional, really possession. You have to be with me. We have to come out of that. And that's when we start going into the love process, where we do believe that I can, warts and all, you're the person for me. So people think the beginning of a relationship, I love this person. It's not love, it's limerence. But we must come away from that. So the ecstasy of that person, and this can last up to 3 months to 18 months. So when people are still in that loved up stage, it's a year on, and people go, for goodness sake, get off each other. They're still in that limerence stage, where they're actually trying to find that next part of them to be able to come through, to go, actually, let's engage with this. Let's move in together. Let's get engaged. Let's do this, that, and the other. People who do it before that will find they're still in limerence. If it's too soon, they'll be in that limerence stage, and we've got to come out of that. Then people worry about the power struggle. And I do believe that actually the power struggle is where the growth is happening. Okay, so this is a linear process that happens, and it goes back. It's a bit like the grief cycle, but we don't stay in one place all the time. And the place we come back to is the power struggle. And this is about disillusionment, frustration, anger, and there's an impasse. We can't seem to get past it. The couples I see, we go round and round and round. We just cannot find that step over to go, oh, that's what that means. Arguing is just about a want. I want something from you, but I don't know how to say it properly. So conflict is growth trying to happen. I feel it's an opportunity for things to shift and change. I think it's a good thing, because there's something getting stuck. Now, this could be relational, but it also could be trauma. It could be family issues. It could be children issues. You will go back to the power struggle. And the whole point of the power struggle is to work it through and come out of it. Now, if we don't come out of it, that's where therapists come into their own, because actually we're trying to get people to realize what they're sitting in is the power struggle. And it's not a bad thing, but if you've been in it too long, it's very difficult to come out of it. And I'll talk about John Gottman in a minute, the behaviors that we do within that if we continue doing it. Then when we come out of the power struggle and we feel really good about ourselves, we start to do a recommitment, the new decision to see the couplehood as a growth and healing process. So we start to engage back with each other. So the recommitment is really important. What happened to us and where have we found ourselves now? Because the shift will be good. It will be like, I didn't like that, but where are we now? And you find that in therapy, you will do sort of 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks. I review after that, because there should be a shift in some way if the couple are doing the work, or if, as an individual, you're doing the work, and there will be shifts. You've just got to make sure you notice them. Then when we're doing the work, what we're doing is the imago dialogue. We're actually mirroring each other. We're connected with each other. We're validating each other, and we have that real strong empathy. And that's why I mentioned the imago just a minute ago. Probably not a great scenario with the bins when we're talking about sex and intimacy, but I feel that that correlates with what I'm talking about now. We need to make sure that we have enough mirroring of each other. We've got mirror neurons anyway, but actually understanding each other. Then we have the validation. Now, we don't want validation that somebody's codependent. I need you to validate me to be okay. But you have enough praise, enough acknowledgement, enough of, I know you can do this. Okay, so there's OVI, okay, and there's SVI. So we've got other validated intimacy, which would be somebody wanting it from somebody else all the time, or we've got self-validated intimacy. And that's why we need to get to self-validated intimacy, because we're an I first, choosing to be a we. So we're allowed to sit in our own space and become our own shape whilst being emotionally connected to someone else, which is really, really important. What we end up doing is we lose ourselves in a relationship, and then we don't know who we are, and then we become a different person. And that's when the John Gottman behaviors start to kick in, which I'll do in a minute. Then when we've done the work and we're empathizing and we're doing behaviors every day to increase our consciousness. So we want to be in a conscious relationship and an intentional relationship. Okay, if we're not in that, then we're pseudo, we're disconnected, we're somewhere else. So we need to be making an effort. I always say, how much effort do you put in for your boss or self-employment? Huge amounts. We don't put the same amount into a relationship. We build the empire and then the empire collapses because we've done all the outside periphery work, but we've not done the connection work inside. Then we go on to awakening. Okay, this is where the journey itself is very exciting. We actually come to a stage where we go, actually, a lot of the ducks are in a row. With the children okay, the finances aren't too bad. We're starting to really connect with each other. We're starting to see a future. We're starting to see a vision of all the things we can do. And in therapy, this would be the time where we'd start saying to couples in therapy, what's your vision for the relationship in 6 months' time? I don't usually do more than a year's time. Some therapists might do 5 years. It's too long. Life is precarious. We don't know what's happening from 1 minute to the next. So we have to do really small increments of time so that we can think about that. And the relationship vision is really important because it gives you a contract of how you can work together as a couple. I've said this on a live before, but I'll say it again, you do 10 visions. So I would like for us 10 things. So better communication, better sex. Always make sure that they put sex in there because sometimes they don't. Then you bring it together. You don't let them show each other. Then you bring it together. And then there's an opportunity for dialogue on each one of them. What does it mean for them? Why did they put that down? And then they choose 3 each that they can do as a contract for the next 6 months. It's very powerful because they're choosing to sign this contract, and I do it in, I type it out and the ones that they're doing and everything, and make sure that they keep on track with it. So you're seeing, and some of them won't happen overnight. There's something they've got to plan, but in the next 6 months, they need to be fulfilled. And then we'd be asking why they weren't, or how come that didn't happen. And then we're talking about John Gottman. No, Harville Hendricks even talks about the real love, the real deal. When we've got to a stage where we actually feel trusting, committed, fondness, togetherness, connectiveness. There's that lack of fear of anything happening. And we are doing conscious couplehood. So when you think about in the very beginning, in the limerence stage, we've got unconscious couplehood. Where is this going? I fear this will end. My family of origin had maybe abandonment or rejection in it. So all of that will come up while we're going through this process. When we go from the recommitment stage to the real love, we'll be looking at a conscious couplehood, actually having a contract with each other that actually this is what is happening for us. And that is, again, communication equals connection. If you can say to your partner, this is my boundary, this is what I will accept, this is how it looks for me. So that's an I statement, not instead of a we statement. And the other person said, this is my boundary. Then we need to really think about how we can put those two contracts together. Because boundaries come from our value system. They're not just something we make up. We can feel when our boundary is violated. We can feel it somatically in our body, and we need to put real boundaries in, but we don't very often, because it's like, it will rock the boat, they will leave me, our relationship will change, they will think bad of me, I might lose everything that I've worked for. Actually, growth is trying to happen here, and if you hold that resentment, then it will turn into contempt. You won't actually like yourself or the other person. So I hope that's helpful. That's like, I call them scripts. It's a script for a relationship. And if we can get ourselves as individuals to think about, what script is it for a relationship? What do I need to do to keep myself on track? And the first word I always use is effort. Make an effort. So sex and I always do intimacy is about that lovely, I still call it sacred place, where you are the only person, if you're choosing to be obviously in a non-sharing relationship, that I am involved with. You are the person that I want to do all of these new things with and existing things with. So we've got to be able to talk about that. We have got, I'm going to say society, where we're very over-sexualized, but in relationships, we're not really talking about sex at all. And actually, there's not a lot of sex going on. Most of the people I see haven't had sex between 6 months and 20 years. And usually it's on anniversaries and birthdays, because it's a treat. That makes me so sad. We've got to really start talking about the dialogue of how I can talk about what I want from the relationship, how you want to talk about what you want from the relationship, because that's the conflict. I'm telling you something and I want something. I can tell you in a pseudo way, in a way that doesn't rock the boat too much, but I actually don't actually end up saying what I want. We go round and round in circles. And if we actually had a dialogue of going, it sounds quite aggressive, but what do you want from me? Tell me right now, because you're arguing with me, and it's the same argument we've had for the last 6 months. What do you want? Tell me what you want from me. And if we can say it softer instead of what do you want, it's nice to be able to say, what do you need from me? I like want. I'm not sure. The need always takes me to a bit of codependency, but I want somebody to say, what is it that you want from me? Then I want the other person to say, this is what I'm trying to ask you. Is it available to me? Because if it's available to you, then you've got the opportunity to be able to go, okay, I can facilitate that. Okay, I can do some of that, but some of it I don't think I will be able to. But it doesn't mean that I won't try. So can you see the difference between the dialogue of not asking for something and actually being able to open up something that actually could be a game changer for the relationship? Because if someone's thinking it, probably a percentage, I'm not very good with numbers, will be thinking it anyway. So it's just who will bring it up first and give you the opportunity to do that. I wanted to briefly talk about boundaries. Okay, when we talk about Harville Hendrix, he talks about getting the love you want. And that's where the deep dive stuff in the relationship comes from. When we start to have a communication about our boundaries, what we're asking for, where we're sitting in our triggers, being able to evidence them to our partner, because it's our job, they're our triggers. The other person didn't live with us when we were 7. They have no idea. So it's about being able to have a real in-depth dialogue. And that's where the vulnerability comes from. Showing the true you, the authentic you, to become vulnerable. That's where the intimacy can start. Now, I'm not talking about divulging all of you, okay? I need to make that really clear, because some people will come into therapy and they will go, here's everything, and then they get overwhelmed and don't come back. What we're doing is a deep dive part of it is being able to go, let's do this slowly. So if you think about therapy, 50 minutes or 1 hour, I get my clients to do homework and say to them, okay, you've got half an hour each, no more, no less. Make the most of your half an hour, and you will find the language will change. They won't waffle on. They won't say things again and again, because they know I've got half an hour to put my case across. And I need to make it precise, and I need to get it heard, and I need to have it validated. Have you heard me? And it really, really works. Whereas if we've got 4 hours, I get clients coming and they go, we didn't go to bed till 2 because the conversation went on. I go, what did you get out of it? It was the same conversation we'd had 2 nights ago. We didn't seem to progress. They can't progress because they're stuck. They're in that impasse bit that nobody has the dialogue to be able to go, stop. Let's think about this differently. Okay, just a brief thing, setting boundaries. Okay, so know your own boundaries. Boundaries are funny things. So since I've been doing the Tantra, we do a lot of consent work, which is really, really so powerful. So we do the consent wheel, where it's actually, I'm allowing you to do this and you're allowing me to do that. And we do a lot of stuff on toys and things, you know, because people just don't want to be touched sometimes, and it just gives another angle of how to do that. But our boundaries are based on our values, the things that are important to us. So if you're not being heard, like I don't really like doing that, and the partner says, well, you used to, the boundary was there in the first place. You just didn't say you didn't like it, because there would have been the beginning of the relationship where you thought, I want to be seen as my best, put my lipstick on, it's okay. Consent is such a strong thing that we need to put in place from the very beginning in relationships. What I want to do, what I'm willing to try, but if I don't like it, I don't want to do it anymore. So the word no, I did I've written the playbook with my daughter Fee, and we're putting it on in March till June, and this is for therapists. But one of the things I do on there is the different sounds of no. And it was very powerful last time we did the playbook. I just got everybody to close their eyes and just said no in different ways. Okay, I don't know whether you want to try this. I'm happy to do it, but it's so powerful. I think it's powerful. Close your eyes for a minute and just allow me to say no in different ways. No. 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 No, don't. No. 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 Don't have to respond to that. But when I did it on the playbook, I did it for a little bit longer. It just invokes such responses from people from different aspects of their life to go, I remember saying no about something, but having a giggle with it, and it continued. I said no really strongly, and actually the person who was doing what they were doing, they became more forward. So this consent stuff that we need to talk about at the very beginning. In the loved up stage, we don't talk about consent very much, but we need to think about how we're holding boundaries for relationships that we're in, for ourselves and for the other person, to not cross them so that actually we feel violated, or we feel it's unfair, it's unjust, why has this happened to me? So we need to be really careful of this. So when you're thinking about your value system, in therapy or not, think about where your value system is. What is your belief system? So my first one is always integrity. You know, the integrity is really important to me personally and professionally. Being trustworthy, being authentic. Okay, these are really strong boundaries for me. And I see boundaries like a train with lots of platforms, and we're human. We do come off of those platforms every now and then. But if we've got a strong value system behind us, we find it very easy to get back on track. So the boundaries come from our value system, and you can feel that somatic process when your boundaries are really, really crossed. You can actually feel it. It's a force onto itself. It probably can bring that rage part of us up, because it feels so intrusive that's why we need to think about how we can put those boundaries in place. And some of the sayings, like, I'm not comfortable with this. So it's not, please, is it okay if you stop doing it? I'm not comfortable with this. This is not acceptable. Please don't do that. So it's the language, it's the tone, it's the boundary, it's all of that, being able to put it into one place. Now, if we've got a partnership where the boundaries are lapsing slightly and we're not being heard, we will find that we will go to the John Gottman place. I've talked about this before in the lives, and I feel that the John Gottman, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, is so important. It's the first thing that I tell people, even if they don't want to know about it, I tell people if they do want to know about it, because we're talking about defensiveness, stonewalling, criticism and contempt. And if you can look at that yourself, so where you are at the moment, okay, it's really, really important to recognize it. So becoming conscious of behaviors that you might be doing that actually are from your childhood. Okay, so defensiveness is child. Okay, stonewalling is child. Criticism is parent, and contempt is hate. So when we get couples coming, when I get couples coming to me, they are usually in the contemptuous part of their relationship, where they have lost sight and sense of each other, understanding each other, listening to each other. And if we lose that sight of each other, that deep dive into that intimacy erodes completely. The two things that go are communication and intimacy straight away. And some of the reasons for the intimacy going is, if I am affectionate towards you, then there will be a possibility of sex, and I don't like you. So we absolutely dilute all of it away from our relationship, which is so sad, because it feels like, you know, from lovers to strangers, because you were strangers, then you were lovers, and then you're absolute strangers again. And it feels really weird. You're just doing perfunctory things, practical, kids and house and money. You're just talking like your roommates. And that's not what a relationship is. If anybody knows me, I think it's friendship, intimacy, and sex, without doubt. Okay, the agape love that we start having as a roommate is the bit that we're going that way instead of that way. And that's why I sort of pull my clients back in to go, okay, you're not roommates. The contract that you've taken out, and this is not about marriage, the contract is that there will be a friendship. I've got your back. There's some loyalty there. I won't talk about you behind your back. You know, we stick together. But then we've got the intimacy, which is beyond others. So we do something beyond others that we don't do with other people. So for me, the boundary setting is really important. So when we talk about, before I go on to just the rupture and repair and how we deep dive into intimacy, I just want to show you this book. I don't know whether anybody's seen it before, Transaction Analysis. I'm not a practitioner in this, but I love being able to recognize what behaviors are going on with the PAC. So let's just go back slightly. John Gottman, okay. The defensiveness is when you don't want to be blamed, which is what we were like as children. It wasn't me. I didn't eat all that cake and it's all around my face. Don't blame me. Stonewalling is, I can't tolerate to be near you because you're flooding me with your stuff and I can't cope. So I need to go away from you. So if we've got somebody who's from an abandon process, who's coming towards to get more that needy, greedy, and the other person comes from a place of maybe a neglect or an absent parent, they won't be able to tolerate that process. So they would disappear. And that makes the person who's waiting for them really frustrated. Criticism is being able to sit in that place of, I told you that before, or I can't believe you've done this again, or you're an idiot, that sort of stuff. So we're coming from a parental place, which there can be no sex when we're parent and child. It doesn't work. We're playing a role now which shouldn't exist. So we need to change that completely. Then we're looking at contempt. So relationships come to a place of contempt. They come to a place where actually I don't know who I've become while I'm with you. And I don't like you because I've become this person. So first of all, we need to take responsibility. I believe in how much power have you given over to the other person. They haven't taken it, you've given it over. But actually the contempt part is it of when we're saying really horrible language, which I won't say on here, but it is vile. Okay, if you look up contempt on the internet, it's pretty awful. And what we're trying to get our couples to do, or as an individual, what are you going through at the moment, is how can we start to think about our behavior and how can we dilute it? And if you look on the internet, there's a little video, and also there's a John Gottman sheet that actually gives an antidote to it. It gives you the opportunity to go, I'm behaving like this, but this is how I do it differently. And it doesn't happen overnight. If you're somebody that automatically becomes defensive, okay, so somebody says something and you're straight on it, like, that wasn't me. You know that actually you've got a lot of work to do. You've got to soothe yourself. You've got to soothe that part of you that goes, I'm in trouble. Yeah, because the partner that you're with, or colleagues that you're with, or friendships that don't know the whole of your background, maybe. So they don't know where that's coming from. They're like, wow, okay, leave it then. So you never really repair that rupture that you keep going through again and again. So I think I've explained that enough, but it is worth looking at that, whether you're an individual, whether you're in therapy or not in therapy. Have a look at what behaviors you're exhibiting around yourself and with other people. Yeah, I'm just thinking whether to make a disclosure. It's really interesting, isn't it? I've noticed in myself lately there's a predisposition of anger for me coming up, and I know it's from my childhood, but I don't know how to display it, which means I'm stonewalling. So I'm very aware of it. I would rather come away from it than go and like tackle it at the moment. So and I will be, but it's really good to become more aware of yourself, so that you're able to do reflective practice. So that's what we did in the very beginning of this this live. It was being able to go, what does sex mean to me? How am I as a human being in that realm? And for me, it's about being able to, the more we get to know ourselves and we reflect on different things, not just have sex, but think, why do I have sex? And what does it mean to me? The same as any reflective practice we're going through, whether it's the behaviors, actually sit for a while, like I am at the moment, and think, so what is this anger going on? This anger is growth trying to happen, but I haven't pinpointed it yet. Yeah, so I'm just sharing that with you. If there's anybody on here tonight that's sitting with an emotion that they're because that's an emotion, there will be a story attached to it. It's not just a feeling, it's an emotion that I'm carrying. What can you glean from it by just sitting and reflecting on it for a minute? No, I don't relish the anger part of me, but I relish the fact that I know that it's there. And I want to be curious about how I'm dealing with it. And that's what I want my couples to be like. Don't turn away from conflict or things that are too hard. Actually be curious. What is happening to me while I'm with you? What's happening to me on my own as an I? And how am I navigating this? And what does it mean for me? So going back to the ego states, which is what these are, it's being able to make sure that you stay in the pattern of adult. Okay, this middle one, adult, the behaviors, thoughts, and feelings, which are direct response to the current reality. You're staying in the moment. Whereas if you're going from the parent ego state or the child ego state, you're actually not in the moment. You're playing a role that actually doesn't fit a relationship. It never will. Okay, but we have these really, the constructs of our relationships with ourselves, our family of origin, ourselves, are so set that we are unconsciously playing them out, and they have to be sort of the same as when we come to therapy and somebody says, right, okay, they said that's a trigger. What do you mean? What do you mean a trigger? It's you're being triggered by that because the somatic process, the thought process, walking away. What was it that happened to you that got you to be triggered in the here and now? Because it's not actually happening to you now, but you'll have the same feelings as if it was. It will be so strong. And that's what we're working on as individuals. What are my triggers? What am I getting upset about? What am I avoiding or denying? And that's why this anger part of me at the moment, I'm not going to turn away from it. I'm going to actually still keep processing it and going through it, and see where it ends up. So be curious about it. Any questions? There doesn't have to be. Never put anybody on the spot. I guess for me, the reason why I do these, I want people to get something out of them. Go away with something, even one thing that you go away with, you think, right, okay, what's my takeaway for tonight? What have I learned tonight that you can actually use as an individual in a relationship, as a therapist, or just in relation to everyone. So let's talk about the rupture and repair. I feel like rupture and repair is very much about, if we can have a rupture and we can repair it, we're more likely to have an intimate regard for the other person. So I look at responsibility and accountability when we're talking about rupture and repair. So if you're having an angst as an individual at the moment, I want you to really sit in that and find out where it's going. When we do rumination, it means that we're looking for something. We're trying to spot what the process is and where we're going with it. But actually, rumination has a non-existent ending, because if we actually drilled it right the way down, it comes from a fear of not being good enough, a fear of imposter syndrome, a fear that actually something's not going to be okay. So the rumination actually ends up being a bit of a waste of time. The logical, the cognitive part of us to actually, you know, always put 4 pillars. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? How am I acting? And what am I doing about it? So action. Actually separate it all out. Rumination will take us to a place of non-existent outcome, because it's a fear. We're feeding, you know what they say, you know, what you feed will grow. So if you're ruminating, the fear will grow. So when we're talking about rupture and repair, the fear of rupture is we don't want it, so we avoid it, but then it happens anyway because it will. Okay, then we've got to think about repair, and a lot of people don't understand what repair is. If you think, for example, somebody having an affair, repair needs to start straight away. Okay, when they come to therapy, they might have been sort of 3 months, 6 months. But I ask, the first one I ask is, how much repair has been done already? And they will say, I'm doing more chores, I'm being mindful of the children, I'm making sure that I'm looking out for any conversations that might be coming. This is all part of the repair. When you think about the love languages that we try to emulate to each other, you know your own and then you swap them over and know your partner's. The love language has a rupture in it at the moment when we're talking about affairs. So we need to take responsibility and accountability for the ruptures and repair. And when we do, the intimacy will grow. Okay, checking in with your partner. I do a lovely thing, you know, the 15 minutes, 7.5 minutes each. My clients are a bit like, oh, really? Friday afternoon, a bit tired, can't be bothered. 5 o'clock comes, they go, and I give nobody the responsibility. 5 o'clock comes, where are you going to meet? At the table, in the living room, if that's in the car, on Zoom, wherever you might be. It's not for somebody to go, have you remembered? No one's taking responsibility. You know it's going to happen. You're in your diary. Okay, they go to it and they, you know, the men, I love the men, they're so funny. They do sort of 3 minutes and they go, I don't know what else to say. They've got to stay in it. They've got to watch that process happen. They've got to accept the uncomfortability for growth. So tolerate the uncomfortability for growth. And they have a bit of a laugh about it. And usually the woman goes, right, your time's up, it's my turn. And then she will usually hold the 7.5 minutes because we're really good at talking, which is fine. So they do that for 3 weeks and then they come back in and they go, we never miss it now. It's the first time we've ever had the opportunity to go, how are you? Not the kids, not the job, not the dog. How are you? And it's intimacy in itself. They say it's so lovely because we don't talk about anybody else but each other. I've had a really good day. I feel happy today. And the other person doesn't have to do anything with it. Even if it's a negative, even if they go, I've struggled today. I have found that I've felt a bit lost or whatever. The other person's not, they're just completely listening. Active listening skills is intimacy. So face to face, even if it's on the phone, you can't look at anything else on your phone. Hopefully no messages are coming through. Being able to be in that 7.5 minutes with each other is just pure intimacy, and getting your clients to do that. When we do the tantra stuff, it's really interesting. When we do, it's called the third eye. And when you lean into somebody with both your foreheads, you actually can only see one eye, which is the third eye. It's absolutely fascinating stuff. I don't know whether you ever tried this with your clients or as a couple. I want you to give this a go. Actually, just, you know, cross your legs, get as near as you can to each other, and just put your forehead with your eyes open, and you'll just see one eye. And that's the third eye that actually connects you. It heart connects you with each other, and being able to do that. And if you step back from each other and you're able to look at the left eye only, the other eye will phase out and the face will become different. There will be a different glow about the face, a softness about the face. You have to do that for about 10 to 12 minutes for the face to change. But it's so, this is real sort of heartfelt stuff that we don't stop and do anymore. We need to engage with romance. We need to engage with intimacy. We need to engage with sex. And we seem to be losing that in a partnership way. And I think it's really, really important. So those are a couple of things that you might try, which is from the Tantra process, which gives you the opportunity to connect with your partner. And I'm not saying, you know, people say it would take too long. 15 minutes that will take. That's all it will take. I want you to think to, why wouldn't I want to give my relationship or as a friendship with somebody? Let's try this, because we can still be heartfelt with friendships. It's just a lovely process. So the deep dive that we need to start doing in relationship is being conscious in our relationship and allowing our subconscious to become conscious and align with each other. Because safety, we talk about John Gottman stuff and Harville Hendricks, we talk about the triangle, what's that called? Forgotten. Not the Cartman triangle, the other triangle, where we're talking about safety, we're talking about belonging, we're talking about being able to have communication. Self-actualizing is right up here, but actually all of that we go through, being able to have I aligned myself with all that I need in the first column, because that's the bit where we're building a foundation. And the reason why we need to connect with each other on a really connectiveness way is, how are we? Where are your thoughts? Where are your fantasies? Are we okay in this relationship? Where are we? And for me, that's just paramount to being able to say to each other, I'm feeling safe in this relationship. Hope everybody's doing okay. I know there's a lot of words, and you know the workshops are not interactive, but I just sort of wanted to make sure that you had some new information, maybe. I did want to briefly go through, which I've completely lost. I always work from working from the worst of you and working from the best of you. Has anybody heard that? And this is one of the things when you talk about aligning yourself with the conscious relationship, this is where we need to look at how we're working with how we are as ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to end on this if I can find it. Bear with. I did have it on a piece of paper here, but I doubt if I'll be able to find it now. I might get Fee to put it on the Facebook. She'll kill me for saying that, I'm sure. But it's a really useful piece. So one, it's all color coded, okay, and it gives you the opportunity to see where you're working from. I don't know what I've done with it. Sorry. So I'm going to get her to put it on the Facebook page. So when we talk about the 4 pillars, okay, which are always vital when we're talking about anything to do with cognitive, working out how we are. So the top of it is about soothing our own bruises, okay? I'm not going to do the colors because I haven't got it in front of me. But what we're doing is actually the worst of you is where you're coming from a place of I'm not coping. And the other sheet is working from the best of you. So it's all on one sheet. And what I do is I fold it over and I say to my clients, have a look at these, and are you working from the worst of you or the best of you? Okay. And there are 4 pillars. So I'm not, oh, hello, it's right in front of me. That's panic for you. There it is. Okay, let's just go through it briefly because I do want to finish it just after 7 and any questions after that. So this is called operating from the best of you, bringing the best to your relationship. So the worst of you is overreaction. Overreacting to each other's anxieties and tensions by withdrawing or attacking. They are the 2 places that you will go when you're not okay. It will be an opportunity for you either withdraw because you're flooded, or you will go towards because you feel like you're being attacked, so you will do the same. And when we look at that overreaction, what we're doing with the best of us is we're looking at the top. This is yellow color. We're looking for the non-reactive partner's reactivity. So for instance, I've noticed with my couples, if somebody comes in and the wife's had a good, or the partner's had a good day and the partner, the guy hasn't, this is not gender-based anyway, okay, but they will come in and they will start talking about something that's really irritated them. And what we sometimes do in a relationship is we end up going with them. That sounds terrible. How dare they? We go up to the very top, but then the partner turns on you because they're starting saying, well, actually, my boss was pretty good to us a couple of weeks ago and he let us have that holiday. So we start arguing with each other. If one person's had a not okay day and the other person's absolutely fine, stay in where you are. Being able to say, what do you need from me? Do you want a drink? Shall I run a bath? Whatever that might be. But we mustn't react to somebody else's reactivity. And when we're talking about relationships, we've got to stay in our own space. So the I process is going on. I can hear you're not okay. We don't want to go towards them. We don't want to be in their space. But we're there for them to say, what do you need from me? The next one would be, this is the green section, anxious and upset. So difficulties controlling your own anxiety and soothing your own emotional bruises. Well, that would be from our childhood. Did you get that nurture? Okay, were you nurtured and made a fuss? Or if you fell over, for instance, and your parent said, get up, just get up, stop making a fuss. Or you had a parent that actually went and got the first aid box, put a little plaster on. There would be some nurture there that would be able to go. And the next time you wouldn't even bother about worrying about falling over. You go and get the box, because that would be where the nurture would come from. What we're trying to do in therapy is getting people to actually soothe their own bruises. We don't want a partner to be the one that has to do that for us. So it'd be soothe your anxiety, quiet your mind, calm your heart. Being able to go, right, okay, I'm okay while you're sitting over there, not validating me completely, okay, because then we've got codependency. So we need to separate ourselves from that slightly. Then we have, from the worst of us, a flaky, shaky, reflective sense of self. So presenting the face that you think other people want to see. Okay, so we need the most important thing in life is being authentic, and staying on that path is a lifelong journey. Okay, so what we're doing when we're talking about the best of us, we've got a grounded response with clear sense of self and holding on to ourselves. So the more you realize that you're an I, and the I process, so that if you look at Ellen Ellen, Helen Bader work, she talks about that I process. Okay, the circle that we have is like this, which is an I process. And then when we meet somebody, we mesh. So we've got that middle part, which is I, the middle bit is the relational. And what we're doing is, as the relationship bonds, we go closer in. So we lose the I. And then when we're coming out of that limerence stage, we go back to that. That's why in a relationship, it can really sometimes feel like the other person's disappearing. Oh my God, what they're doing is they're differentiating, going, I've forgotten who I am. So I'm going to come away from you slightly to find that I of me again. But I'm not going. I'm just working me out. But it can be quite fearful when because nobody says, oh, by the way, I'm just nipping over here. They just go, oh, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I need to find some space. That's okay. Yeah. So we've got to be able to find that authentic self. And when we're talking about that clear sense of self, that again, that's a journey in itself. Who am I to me whilst I'm with you? So David Schnartz talks about, I want to be differentiated while I'm emotionally connected to you. So I'm going to stay me while I'm with you. And some people find that really difficult. It can seem a bit cold sometimes. No, I don't like doing that. This is what I would prefer to do, or this is where I am. It's not somebody going, I'm not coming out with you because I don't want to. Differentiation is a really deep set process that we have to learn. Some people have low differentiation, which means that they can't feel that they can function in a way that a relationship can grow, which will hamper that. Pure differentiation is going, I'm me, you're you, but this works. And the last one, which is in orange, is avoiding what needs to be done to grow in this relationship. David Schnartz talks about, if you're going to be in a sexual relationship, you need to grow up. Okay, that can be quite hard to say to people in its entirety, just grow up. It's a little bit more than that. But what we're doing is actually tolerating discomfort for growth. Hang on in there. So even though at times life can seem really, really difficult, it's being able to endeavour being part of that relationship to go, right, okay, I can see what's going wrong, but how can we then come through this? So Christine Dunkley, she's a wonderful woman. She used to be my supervisor. She talked about the pain barrier. She's got research done. People go round it, they go over it, they don't want to go through it. And this is what sometimes we work from the worst of us, because we don't want to feel the pain, actually the vulnerability that we might get to, that actually makes us feel too exposed, too open to somebody else, because our family of origin might not have been like that. And then you'll get other people that are really sharing and information and we're all very, very different. We're all unique in our own ways. But this sort of paperwork is useful for ourselves, thinking, do I soothe myself? Am I grounded? Do I need to do a little bit more work on myself? Like I've mentioned to you tonight about where I am, there is work to be done, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't make me different from anybody else having the awareness, but think about where you are as an individual and in a relationship, and find out what you need. And again, I do believe that all of this is a lifelong journey. When we say I'm going to differentiate myself, I'm going to find myself, whatever it might be, I need time out. It's not a month, it's not a week, it's not a day, it's continuous, which is I love that journey. I know it can be painful sometimes, but I want us to see conflict as growth trying to happen, not come away from it, but actually the endeavor to be able to sit with it. It's 8:04. Okay, so any questions? You can put them in the chat if you want to, or you can come on screen and ask me a question. It's up to you. There is no right or wrong with this. You can choose.
Hi, Lottie.
Hi, Michelle.
I just about the vision for relationships. I really love that from the 6 months. Keeping it in the kind of the near future. I just want to double check. Did you say that for them to separately think of 10 visions for themselves and then come together, discuss them, and then was it choose 3 each to then come and contract and work for?
Yeah, I do it where they're going, I would like, because they're in a relation, I would like for us. So they're thinking of what it is. So I would like more sex, let's just say, for us. I'm choosing that I would like more sex in this relationship for us. Then we talk about that. We talk about actually what would be the version of both of you and what would more sex mean. So one person might make 3 times a week and the other person saying twice a month. So we've got to find an alignment with that to how that's going to work. And some of it, I was talking to somebody today about the contrivance of sex or the spontaneity of sex. Sometimes we have to have a little bit of both. And actually, if we don't look at it as a chore, like next Tuesday is going to be sex night, and we go, oh God, I might not feel like it. Let's put it as a ritual. Let's actually work towards it, make us feel like actually something good's going to happen. When we think of it as a chore, we will automatically, our neural process will be going, I'm not going to feel like it. And that's, last Monday, I'm thinking I'm not going to want it Tuesday. You might not. No one's saying you have to have sex. What we're saying is connectiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going off track, I always go off track a bit, Michelle,
So-
as you know. But yeah, it's 10 things that you would like in the next 6 months. I would like for us. And you're saying to the other person when it comes into therapy, they don't show each other. I'll tell you why in a minute. Is because it gives them the opportunity to hear it for the first time. I didn't know that you wanted more holidays, or I didn't know you wanted to have more freedom. When you met me, I said, I don't want you to go into football or rugby, and you're missing it. I didn't even know you were. You never, but I don't mention it because I know you don't really want me out that many. So it's about 3 or 4 sessions worth.
Okay.
Because
And
so much comes out of it. It's not just one session. And some people write paragraphs and other people write sex.
okay.
Communication.
You explore each of the 10, but
Yeah.
then at the end, do they then essentially compromise on those values, those kind of 20 values, or is it that they're choosing the priority ones to work
Yeah.
with and on?
I never say the word compromise. We're negotiating, because compromise feels like I've left something out. If somebody says we want 8, we want 7, we want 6, you're looking at 6 months. How manageable is 8 or 10? How many of them? You don't want to set anybody up for failure. So I always say 6, which always seems to be the prime number. Everything I do is in 3s, apart from the pillar. Is being able to say, is this manageable? Will you be able to succeed in this? Because we don't want to get to the end and go, we never completed that. There will be a reason why you didn't. So avoidance or time or whatever it might be. But it's the vision, I think, is really lovely because it just gives couples an idea of where they come from. And the reason why I don't get them to share is a couple of my guy clients copy and paste. So when they come in, I go to them, why? Hang on a minute. If you're not doing it together, how do you have probably half of your 10 saying exactly the same thing? And they've copied and pasted because they said I could only think of 5. If they come in and they've only thought of 5, this is not a test, because they might be the most crucial 5 that actually is important to them. Yeah.
No.
So with that flexibility of being a therapist gives us the opportunity to go 5 is enough. And when we go through it, they go, I want that too. Whatever they've said, I wish I'd put that on there. And we always indicate, please put intimacy or sex on there, because a lot of people don't. It's all perfunctory.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's okay, Michelle. Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you for your questions. As I said in the very beginning, if you want to contact me afterwards, all my details are on my web page. So you can email me. I'm quite happy to ask questions. I can do a 15-minute Zoom if you want to, if there's anything going on for you. So that's including couple therapy, individual therapy, supervision. Details of the playbook are on my website, and that's to do with therapists. We've also got the Paradox of Change, which is a podcast that myself, I can see Elliot on here, and Fee, we are the co-founders of it. And we're really inspired by how many people have come forward, including entrepreneurs and practitioners, and also clients have participated in being able to do a podcast with us and talk about their experience of being in therapy, which has been, the heartfelt feeling of that is absolutely huge. But I'd also like to say that if there's anyone that wants to tell a story, the podcast for us, I'm sure Elliot will agree with me, is about being able to share this information that we've gathered. The reason the podcast is there is because we want to give back. give back completely. So if there's any of you guys on here or anybody you know that's got a story, whether it's a story about their experiences, it doesn't have to be, it can be something they'd like to share. So we do interviews with people, we share the platform with people. We've actually done feet on the street a couple of weeks ago in Southampton, asking people about their mental health. So if there's any practitioners that want to come on board with that, and be brave and have a proper microphone with a really expensive camera and walk around and talk to people. It's just fun getting out there. The lives are about giving back. The POC is about giving out back. The playbook is about getting therapists. We need more couple therapists out there that are really robust and can hold a couple. So yeah, any questions about that, then please let me know. But there's a lot of exciting things going on. And I do appreciate the Facebook page and everybody that's on it. And I always appreciate anybody that comes onto the live. I do talk to myself sometimes because I'm passionate about getting this out there and it being put on the Facebook page. And we do get a lot of people doing the replays, which is fantastic. So any other questions before we leave? And we'll end the session. No? Okay, good to see you all. And I'll see you next month. We'll send out the details and go from there. All right, guys. Thank you. Sarah, can you hear me? Hi, Sarah.